from your experience, what are the most common misconceptions people have about compulsive sexual behaviors and betrayal trauma?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a couple of the ones maybe we've already touched on a little bit is that, I'm the only one. I would be totally ostracized from this community if people knew what was going on behind closed doors. I think other things like, I can kind of handle this on my own. I can, just this can be a conversation between me and Jesus, and I can ask his forgiveness, and I'm just going to try harder. So there's sort of the behavior modification sort of metric, if you will. Those are some of the common things. And then honestly, I think one of the other misconceptions is just when there's a discovery, just how lonely, particularly the betrayed spouse, might feel. There's all kinds of misconceptions there about, am I unlovable, or what did I do wrong, or does this mean that my whole marriage is a sham? And obviously, there's so much compassion that we have for people, particularly spouses who are in these sort of betrayal situations. And our sense is that as long as someone is going through that silently or alone, because it hasn't come into the light, it's just devastating. But once there's a little bit of courage expressed to come forward, talk to one of our pastors, and begin connecting in the recovery community, man, it is just so powerful because these stories get shared, and we realize actually we have the support. People have been through this, and they want to help, which is so powerful.
I love the way you guys are embracing that part of helping people grow in this area is to embrace those misconceptions. To say to the betrayed spouse, this isn't your fault. This isn't because you're not good enough. This isn't because you weren't providing your own body often enough, because that lie is that if I only got enough at home, I wouldn't stray. And we have just found that is not why people struggle the way that they do. As we say a lot as a ministry, it's not actually about the sex. It's other things that are driving us. And when a spouse doesn't know that, if they're stuck in those misconceptions, that burden of shame and responsibility can be crushing, versus the role that a community of faith can play to say, hey, you're not alone. There's not something wrong with you that caused this, and there's nothing you could do so perfectly to fix this, that your spouse really has some serious work to do. And then being able to look at that spouse, and I think you've used the word several times that I would highlight, and that's compassion. I've just found so often in this area, when people get to that point of actually facing it, keep in mind, they've typically had 15, 20 years or longer of battling on their own and living with a whole lot of guilt and shame and condemnation of themselves, that as they come forward, the compassion of others who say, we're so proud of you for facing this. You're not alone. We're with you. And I think one of the messages, so many men in particular, because that message of being good enough is so strong, I think, for men, is for a man to hear, this isn't because your faith is weak or because you didn't have enough faith. Because I think we really believe that, if I just loved Jesus enough, if I just believed the Bible enough, then I wouldn't struggle. And I wish to God that's how it worked, that we could just kind of amp up our own faith and this problem disappears. But what I've just seen in my own story, and for so many men, is you can be so sincerely in love with Jesus and doing your best to live for him and be in the Word and be in prayer, and still struggling along with this unresolved issue because you've never been given the tools or the community you need to actually find transformation there. And if we could just give people the compassion of that message to quit. I mean, yes, we need the guilt that leads us into conviction of, I want to change this, absolutely. But to give them the compassion to say, stop telling yourself it's because you're a weak Christian that you struggle, or because you don't believe enough. And let's look at some of the deeper issues that might be driving this, that if you realize Christ is right there with you in it, real transformation is possible.